I don't know when I started keeping it. There's no title, no folder, no formal record, but I know exactly who's on it. The list. People who hurt me, betrayed me, walked away when I needed them most. Some names I thought I'd moved on from. Some names I've circled again and again. I used to think the list made me stronger, but if I'm honest, it's made me tired. This season on Other People's Shoes, we're opening up the pages, not to fix it, to admit the list exists, and ask what it's really costing us to keep it. Welcome to Season 23, The List. Now, here's your host, Neil Matthews.
Yes, welcome in to Other People's Shoes. We can now officially say it. Yes, we can. We are at 401 as of today. 401. We start the climb to 500. Man, that staircase seems daunting. 400. I'm still blown away by last week. 400 shows in less than 8 years. We finally are getting close to maybe the end. Joke every year at the end of every year. And I know we're not at the end of the year yet. Listen, we still have a whole nother season to get to. We're excited about that. It's going to be called Lost and Found. If you don't know, now you know. And we're excited about that. I was talking to Garrett. Y'all might know Garrett. He's our old executive producer. I throw ideas from time to time at Garrett. I said, Garrett, listen, I have stuff for next year for 2027. And he said, what are they? And I said, well, and I told Garrett what they are. And they're really good. And then a couple of days go by, maybe a week goes by, and I was like, Garrett, listen, I have stuff now for, you ready? 2028. He starts laughing. He said, so what? You like signed a 2-year contract extension? And I was like, yeah, that's a good way to put it. But you know what is the challenge is I have so many great people in my life. Something happened a while back in April that I've kind of teased and tap danced around, I guess is a good way to say it. And lo and behold, I went to somebody that I trusted and I still trust. And I said, listen, you know the story, you know what's happening. It was my mother-in-law, of all people. I know. Some people are like, your mother-in-law? You mean your monster-in-law? No, listen, I got blessed with an amazing wife who has an amazing mother. She actually gave me this idea of what I'm going to do today. Speaking of the history of the show, of 400 episodes, I've never in my life done this. I've had a co-host. That's a different animal. Kind of have that banter. There's that sharedness. No, today, at 401, I'm turning over the show to someone else today. I'm gifting someone the ability to be the host. I'm going to be the guest. This person is going to be the host. You might recognize her voice if you know the archives and you know the Wayback Machine. I didn't even put research on it, but I know it's been a minute since we've had her in. Life has changed for her dramatically in some respects, also dramatically in a good way. And so I want you to help me welcome in a very good friend of mine, a very good friend of the show. She might even, I would say that because everyone should be a friend of the show. Help me welcome in today's host, Dr. Amy Watson. How are you today?
Hello, hello, hello. You know what? I'm good, first of all. Congratulations, man. 401 episodes and ideas for 2 years. I literally don't know what's on my next episode. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here because I do understand what it's like to give up your microphone, number one. Number two, we've got some stuff to talk about and some important stuff. And so I'm loving this series that you're on forgiveness. I think I reached out to you and said, hey, let's talk. It sounds like your mom-in-law gave you this idea.
That really is what started it. Amy knows about forgiveness, knows that road. She's been in those shoes. And I thought, I don't want to miss your voice. I think your voice can add to this conversation in immense ways. Foresaw this episode and I even pitched it to you. I said, Amy, this is what I'm thinking. I don't know what you think. And like a good believer, a good disciple in Jesus, you said, first thing you said is, Neil, I like the idea. You said, I need to pray about it and get back to me. And so we did the dance of waiting and wanting. And I'm like, okay, Amy, and I know you were sick for a while. I was traveling. It's just those things that happen. And I'm like, finally, okay, this is real. It's really happening. Get a note from research just got slid to me. January 27th, 2021.
Wow.
That's when you aired with us. You were in a series called Do You See Me? That's been a minute. We could revisit that. So that was season 7. We're now on season 23. It's clearly been a few minutes. Episode 4, by the way.
Yeah, love it. So Neil and I first, gosh, I should call these my COVID connections.
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah. So you and I, both podcasters, met on Eric Nevin's Christian Podcaster Association. All the things. During COVID, I remember doing those Tuesday night meetings. Yeah. And yeah, a lot has changed since that episode. You referenced there for a second. COVID was a big pivot for me. I started my own podcast, which I think you're on, actually. I will need to look. I'm not as good at you as looking up that. COVID was a pivot for me. And if you go back and listen to that episode, you know, I've been through some stuff. The Lord's walked me through some stuff. But I decided to go back and get my doctorate degree, which I received on November the 15th of last year from Liberty University. Doctorate degree in community care and counseling with a focus on trauma. So what we're going to talk about today is close to my heart for so many reasons. There are two questions that you ask everybody. Number one, what is the size of your shoe?
So I wear an 11. Now I've also splashed into an 11 and a half, depending on the style and the brand. In my mind, 11's good. 11 fits good.
Okay. And what is your favorite style / kind of shoe?
Well, I think most people know this, but if you don't, it's okay. You're late to the party. It's fine. We've already started with the appetizers and we're working our way through the salad. You're not that late. There's only one brand. I hunt, I search, I look everywhere I can. Anytime I get to, I will buy them, and that is Jordan. I am a Jumpman guy through and through. I even got my microphone a Jumpman since last you showed. The microphone was feeling neglected. I get all the shoes and the microphone didn't. I finally was like, okay, microphone, I hear you. I see you. I recognize that you feel left out. So here you are. Microphone, you get a Jumpman shoe as well.
That's fantastic. Gotten into shoes lately. I am a bandwagon Caitlin Clark fans. I am waiting for those CCs to come out, all the different colors. So when I reached out to you and said, hey, I'd love to be a voice, you're right, I did pray about it. Why did you ask me? So when you thought about that, I know your mother-in-law gave you the idea, why did you want to have this conversation in general?
The why you, one, Amy, I've followed your journey on social, and I knew when I was gearing up to have this conversation that I wanted to have it with somebody that I trusted, somebody that I thought could give not only a clinical kind of side of things, but I also wanted to really have somebody that has walked in my shoes. You're the first person that jumped into my mind. Your post is what kind of planted that seed of like, hey, almost like the kid in the back, hey, don't forget about me. I can bring value to that conversation. And I knew you would handle this with care. That's the why me portion of it. The reason for the conversation is I think there is such still a stigma around men and this topic. And I'm purposely kind of dancing around it. Some people right now are listening like, okay, get on with it. Like, what is the topic? Like, what is going on here? Like, this is so surreal for me. Listen, it's surreal for me too. So buckle up, settle in. Here we go. Is I feel like it's time. And that was one of the things my mother-in-law said in the early stages of me walking through this experience is she said, you need to talk about it. You need to share with people that this happened and what you're doing about it.
Right. Yeah. So we are going to be talking about important topic today. One that can be, you can already hear it in my voice, emotionally charged. One that if statistics are right, about 2 out of 4 of you understand. And so we're going to be talking about suicidal ideations especially in connection with your theme and forgiveness. What you said to me and why I needed to pray about it was because you said, the person I need to forgive is staring back at me in the mirror. I'm honored that you would have this conversation with me. It is not something I take lightly. It is a conversation that I've had with countless people, patients, mainly patients at the hospital, and it's hard. Before we get into it, guys, I do want to mention, I'll mention several times in the course of this conversation, if you are having thoughts of hurting yourself in any way, please reach out for help. You are not alone. There is a number that you can call. It's simple 988, and you'll hear me mention it a lot during the course of this conversation. But so oftentimes, suicidal ideations are so complicated. And if you don't have any more than maybe a high school biology class behind your belt, hopefully what we're going to share with you today, or what I'm going to try to help Neil work through, are some things to help you understand why we have these thoughts. You are not alone. And if you're a Christian, these thoughts are not sinful. So as we step into this conversation ever so gingerly and tenderly, Neil, tell me why it's been hard to tell this story.
I think first off, I need to set the table. Everything I'm going to share, I've shared with Elizabeth. So this is not aha moment. This isn't a great reveal to her. I haven't shared something with you first before talking to her. Her and I walked through this experience. Back in April, my daughter was, for whatever reason, not home, and she's gotten a dog. I've talked about the dog a couple of times. The dog's name is Tramp. He's a King Charles Spaniel Cavalier, I think is actually his breeding and branding. He's a small little black dog. You could pick him up. You could hold him. He snuggles you like a little baby would. It was a Sunday. I go in to let the dog out. I got up early. That's kind of my custom. I've been getting up earlier and earlier, it seems, as I get older. That morning I woke up. I walked in. I felt bad him being in the kennel, so I woke up, went into my daughter's room. Again, my daughter's gone. Go in there, and as I open the door, I'm hit immediately with the fumes and the aroma of dog poop. And we all know that smell. And it is nasty, and it makes you want to vomit. And those are all the feelings I'm feeling. And as I look over towards the kennel, the dog has pooped all over the kennel, all over his blankets, all over everything. The smell is nauseating. Open up the cage, I let him out, and as I let him out, I realized there's now poop on his paws, and so now he's stepped on my daughter's carpet, and there's obviously poop on the carpet happening. And so I immediately go into cleanup mode, cleaning him up, cleaning the kennel up, cleaning everything up, and I'm noticing that there's little drops of poop on my daughter's carpet. And so being the good dad, I'm not going to leave that for her. I'm on my hands and knees, quite literally on my hands and knees, all fours, cleaning the carpet. And I had this thought. I'm not proud of this thought. I don't endorse this thought. I'm not excited about even sharing this thought. And maybe even said out loud in sort of an angry prayer. I'm sure no good Christian has ever said an angry prayer. Your halo's on really tight if you haven't. I literally said this: God, this is my life now. You have me cleaning up shit. You've brought me to my knees to clean up shit. Again, I'm not proud of the words. That kind of tells you the state that I'm in. You shake the cup, that's what comes out. Yeah. Now, for the last month, I had lost my job. I'd worked for a very good friend of mine for almost 2 years. We served in youth ministry together at a church. We got in a really bad fight. Friends do that. Friends get in fights. And it ended up turning into a very much of a screaming match. But that's what led me to cleaning up dog poop on the carpet on my hands and knees, is I had been for a month trying to find a job and could not. I tried everything. I even thought about selling cars. Your gift of gab would come in handy. I went to a car dealership who I'd purchased 2 cars from, and I thought, oh man, I got a shoe in. I know them. They know me. They're like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Gone to countless interviews, and people were like, hey, you're really qualified. You're super articulate. We're not interested. Thanks, but no thanks. And I kept getting rejection after rejection after rejection. You kind of see maybe where this is going. So I took the dog outside back to the dog, and we have property here. My brother-in-law has blessed us with the ability to live with him on his property. We have 63 acres in Southern Oregon, 63 acres. If you Google Table Rock, Oregon, you can see sort of the area that I live in, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I'm out walking the 63 acres, and there's a tree sort of at the end of our property, faces my house when you look back towards the house. And I got the dog with me, and Amy, to this day, still don't know where this thought came from. It scared me so much, I don't even want to think about where it came from. I have ideas, obviously, from a spiritual standpoint. Again, I don't know who put that file in my head. I looked back at the house, looking at the dog, and I literally said this thought. Again, much like the dog poop and everything else, I was kind of spinning that morning. I said, it would be really easy for me to go into my room, go into my safe, grab my gun, come back out here, and kill myself. I'm such a burden to Elizabeth. I've been weighing her down for years. Next week, we'll be married 25 years. We'll be in Hawaii.
Oh, good.
All that would have been gone had I acted on my thought. The other thought I had is, okay, if I shoot myself or kill myself, which I really wanted to so bad. I felt like I was such a burden to my wife. I felt like for years I've been the dreamer, I've been the hippie, I've been the free spirit. I can't hold a job to save my life. I mean, my friends make jokes all the time like, well, where are you working now? Ha ha ha. How long are you going to work there? Ha ha ha. Yes, all of that is fun and good teasing in some respects, but man, it stings still. I was ready to do it. And the only reason why I didn't is I felt bad for the dog. I thought, okay, so not only am I going to take my life, which then takes me out of being a husband and a father, then what happens to the dog? Is the dog just going to run free on the property? And what if he got ran over? And what if he got hurt? This is the part where I'm going to really heavily lean into your doctorate experience here, Amy. I didn't want to orphan the dog. And I really feel like God put that dog in my life in that moment to save me. Didn't want my daughter to have to now grow up without a dad, no marriage, no daddy walking her down the aisle. If something happened to her dog, I think I would add into the trauma. My dad's gone and now my dog's gone too. My dad took my dog. Do I kill the dog? Like nobody wants to kill the dog.
Right.
And that's the part that I really struggled with. And then I want to play one clip for you before I turn it over to you. Is you and I both in the pre-show about the show The Pit. And there's a character, and I don't even know his name. Dr. Robbie, that's his name. Dr. Robbie on the character. I don't even know his real name in real life, but he was on Noah Wiley. Thank you. Yeah. He was on ER for a long time. I loved his character on ER, and I love his character even more on The Pit. Anyway, there's this scene getting ready to take a trip, and he's talking to his motorcycle buddy who's fine-tuned his motorcycle to get it ready for this trip. Wiley's character, Dr. Robbie, has this statement. Here it is.
I don't know if I want to be here anymore. I don't know that I want to be anywhere anymore.
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me, to a T.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned about men's health. June is Men's Health Awareness Month. Agree with you, there's so much stigma, especially as it relates to men. I'm so grateful that you've shared this with me. And I do want you to tell us really quickly before I start, what are you afraid that people are going to come out of this episode? Like if we stopped it right now, what's your fear that the listener will take away that's not accurate at all?
I don't know if it's a fear. I think it's more of a concern. My concern is I don't want to appear weak or disqualify all the work that I've done so far on the show. Not that I'm submitting my resume every week, but 401 episodes. That's unheard of in our industry of podcasting. Independent, non-sponsored, non-revenue generating, monetized people. Yes, Joe Rogan has 3 million shows, I think. Arbitrary number. He has a lot. The small independent people that try to do it week in and week out, I don't want it to disqualify anything that I've done. And I don't want someone to just feel bad or sorry.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Men's Health Awareness is June. I want people to walk away with saying, wow, Neil's a real person, one. And two, it is a reality that people need to be aware of. Yeah. That there are men struggling with this. And men right now, listen, I don't know the male genre or listenership that I have for male listeners. I would hope that if a wife or a girlfriend or a auntie or a Mima, whatever, is listening to this saying, hey, go listen to this guy, not for the downloads, not for the accolade, not for any of that, just from the standpoint of saying, he walked through this, you can too. And I guess that's what I want someone to take away.
Thank you. I asked that question for a specific reason. We've known each other, 6 years and followed each other's journey and all of that. There's a lot of points that I would want to drive home to you today, but the main one in this context of this part of the conversation is so many times, particularly those of us that get behind microphones and in front of cameras and have a voice, we begin to tie our identity, our value with this thing. In this case, other people's shoes. In my case, my ministry. The fact of the matter is that you are infinitely more valuable than 400 episodes or 401 episodes here. What you have chosen to do today is a special kind of brave. Because these dark thoughts, we call them intrusive thoughts. And so allow me to go sciencey just for a second for the listeners, because I want you to understand that the story that you're telling me makes sense. It makes sense from what we know about the brain. It makes sense from what we know of how we're wired. And so I did have you on my podcast, actually, and it was on Forgiving Trauma Makers, ironically enough. And you were brought up by a United States Marine. There's a lot of places we can go with that. The shame and stigma of mental health was probably deeply rooted and steeped in your very being. You didn't talk about things, I hate this term, by the way, pulled yourself up by the bootstraps and kept going. Here's the thing. How old are you, Neil?
46.
46. So very similar to what happened with me, though I was younger, I was in my mid-30s. These things come knocking on our door. That thought that you have, we call that an intrusive thought. It's a fancy name for thoughts that come in that you did not invite, but they are deeply rooted back in your brain and your memory bank somewhere. And the problem with suicide and suicidal ideations and those people that actually die by suicide, those people that carry on with their suicidal ideations, they are not operating with what we call your thinking brain. For the scientists in the room, it's called your prefrontal cortex. And if we were on video and we're not, look up Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model. What that is if you hold your fist up in front of you and you pretend that your arm bone is your spine and your fingers, so I've got my thumb tucked underneath my hand, and your fingers are what we call your prefrontal cortex. This is what helped you that day. And this is a miracle, and you're getting ready to understand why. This is what helped you that day not carry through with the suicidal ideation, because some part of your PFC was what we call online. People who die by suicide, people who walk around with debilitating anxiety, people who make poor decisions, that maybe addiction, all of those kinds of things. That PFC, Dan Siegel calls it flipping your lid. It literally comes offline. And so now my thumb is exposed, and there's two important brain components in there. One is your amygdala, which is your fear center, and the other is your hippocampus, which is your memory center, which is where intrusive thoughts come from. In this case, Neil, in my opinion, I'm a very new doctor. You were being ruled in that moment by your fear center. You can't provide for your family. You've been rejected for a solid month. probably somewhere, and you're not even thinking about this, you probably thought when you're on your hands and knees cleaning the dog poop that I should be at work. If I was at work, I wouldn't be cleaning dog poop. And so there's so many directions we can go with that. But the reason why I shared the brain anatomy with you, suicidal ideations are almost always based in two things, and sometimes both of them together: fear. And so when I worked at the hospital, we had, over the last couple of years here in Florida, we've had some pretty bad hurricanes. And I can't tell you how many people's intro, they're admitted to the hospital under what we call in Florida a Baker Act. I think in Oregon it's called a 5150, where you're being held against your will because you're a danger to yourself or somebody else. I can't tell you how many patients started the conversation with, it started with a hurricane, I lost everything, or I don't have a job. Fact of the matter is in this world, you need the green folding stuff to make a living. And then you combine that with being a man, being a leader in your home that God created you to be. Some other parts of your story that I remember are true, that Elizabeth is, and I quote, put up with you for 25 years. You guys had some things that you worked through. And so in my opinion, what happened to you that day was your body, your mind, your spirit, and maybe even God said, hey, Neil, it's time. It's time to face whether it's an identity crisis, whether you're tying your identity to whether you can keep a job, tying your identity and whether you can support your family, tying your identity to 400 episodes. Hey, Neil, you are a precious son of the Most High God. In this world, you will have trouble. And it was dark for you that day. Why you decided the dog, I don't really know from a psychoanalyzation in that, except for something in you still wanted to be alive in that moment. And the dog was the only living creature there. I'm interested, though, in hearing more about the story. Here's the other thing I want this episode to be rooted in, because we're talking about why can't Neil forgive himself? And I want to know what it is that you want to forgive yourself for. Before I do that, though, so many times these things are rooted in shame, which is probably a part of yours and Elizabeth's story years ago. If you don't hear anything from me for my whole life, Neil, I want you to hear this, that we have an enemy that gives you this definition of shame. I am the mistake, not that I made a mistake. So let's go back in that room. You're back on your knees. You're going outside. You're thinking, I could just end this all, but I don't want the dog. Ultimately, you probably didn't want your family to find you and or the dog. Think you're helping people who have these thoughts. And again, 988, if you or somebody you know is thinking of hurting yourself, you are so valuable. You matter. This world would suck without you. But let's go back there, Neil, and let's help the listeners understand a little bit more about what you did next.
I did go back inside. I didn't go grab the gun. I stuffed it down, kind of closed the tab like on a computer. I shut it down. I was really angry. I know that. It was a Sunday. We were getting ready to go to church. We didn't end up going to church, Elizabeth and I. We ended up getting in a fight about the dog and all the mess that the dog made. And she was mad because I was making a lot of noise because I'm not very quiet, I'm sure, when I'm annoyed. That's just a trait of, I think, most people and maybe even men. I'm not alone in that either. I want to fast forward to a week later. We're in Portland. We had arranged months ago, prior to this incident, of going to Portland to see a comedian. Justin Dickerson, I think is his name. He's toured with Nate Bargatze, and he's super funny. And we drive up there, and again, I have this thought still lingering, this cloud, if you will, still over me. No umbrella in sight to block the rain. It's just pouring. We're super tight on our budget as far as we're not spending extra stuff on this or that. Normally, when we go to Portland, we kind of shop a little bit, and I look for shoes. We're not doing any of that normal stuff. We can't. We have one income. I even said to Elizabeth, I said, we should probably not go because I don't have a job. And she said, no, we've already paid for it. It's fine. We'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So we go. We go with another couple. I've known the husband since 6th grade. I've known the wife we met in high school. She was the maid of honor in our wedding. I've known them a long time. We've walked through many different situations with them. They walked through some dark stuff in their life, and we've kind of been there as friends. We end up playing this card game that my wife absolutely loves. It's called Swoop. If you don't know, you don't know. It's amazing. My wife calls it the gospel of Swoop because she's been telling everybody and teaching everybody this card game. I like the game, but I don't like to lose. Let me say that one more time. I don't like to lose. I absolutely hate to lose. And I absolutely get destroyed at Swoop by Krista. I'll shout out her. And she destroys all of us, really, truly. She just had had an incredible run, must have played, 10, 12 hands, and she just killed us all, just destroyed us. So we go to bed that night, and I'm literally having an adult temper tantrum while I'm losing, and my wife is not happy, but I'm making it uncomfortable for everyone and uncomfortable for them and uncomfortable for her. And so we wake up the next morning, and my wife, I think, still a little bugged by, maybe a lot bugged by what happened with my adult temper tantrum. And she sort of lets me know that she's not happy and she's not thrilled with my attitude. And I've been angry all the time. And why am I so angry? And every little thing is setting me off. She feels like she's walking on eggshells. By the way, Amy, that was the key thing. She said, I'm tired of walking on eggshells around you. I finally lost it in that hotel room in Portland. I said to her, you really think it's that bad? Let me tell you how bad it is. And I laid into her in a very angry way. I'm not proud of that. I mean, I didn't yell or get physical. I didn't do any of that. I just said, here's where I'm at. And I just vomit on her like, bleh. More detail than I'm giving you right now. And the reason why I'm not sharing those details is that's between her and I. Not that I'm hiding anything or not revealing something. I don't want that on the table. There are certain things that are for her and certain things that are for everyone else. I get done and I tell her everything about the dog and the gun and going to get it and all of this. And she starts crying. And for Elizabeth to cry, I want this noted, it takes a lot. She's not an emotional woman. She cries on the inside like a winner. I'm not trying to be funny there. That's just a phrase she has said for a lot of years. She's crying. And she said, you have to know. I can't even believe you would even think that. Why? And I said, well, here's why. I said, because I'm a burden to you. I'm weighing you down. All the things, all these years. I said, I've just been a constant weight to you. I must be like a millstone, like trying to sink you down, like pull you down under the water. And you're a great swimmer. You love the water. You're like a mermaid in the water. And she said, I couldn't go on without you. I need you. I'm like, yeah, sure. You need me financially. No, she's like, no, listen, I need you. I want you in my life.
Thank you, Elizabeth, if you can hear this.
So I came home from this trip. The first thing I did is I got the gun out of the house.
Good.
I took it to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, in tears, praying over me, speaking in tongues over me. They believe in that. And she said, I really think you need to talk about this and do a show about this. She said, I think it could help so many people. And I immediately dismissed it. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. No, this is me. This is for me. This is for no one else. This is for me. And she said, no, Neil, I really think you should pray about it and think about it. And I kept that tab open, but I also closed it a couple times, but I reopened it. When you posted, Amy, I really believe that was a God wink to me to say, nope, it's time to open that tab. So the gun isn't even in my house to this day. It's still not. I feel like I'm better now. Could it be? Yes. A couple of things I did. First thing I did is I went to church, shared with my pastor. We're at a new church now.
Okay,
and we've only been at this church for about 7 months at the time of this story. I go to him and I say, listen, Paul, I need to meet with you. And I literally gave him my whole life story in like 4 hours. I felt so bad for him. And he invited me to this men's group that meets on Thursdays. And so I went. There are some people in there that are way smarter than me when it comes to the Bible, way smarter than me. And I felt so intimidated and felt so alone. They welcomed me in and they invited me in and they took me in with my quirks. They loved me. That was so amazing. I haven't not felt that experience in a church experience in a really long time. Probably since I was a little kid. One Thursday, share this with the pastor. I said, hey, Paul, listen, I've been dealing with this and I don't know what to do. And he said, Neil, I don't know how to tell you this. I've had those thoughts too. I was like, what? Amy, hear me. Listener, hear me. I've never in all the years of church life had a pastor confess to me or share with me in any form or fashion that they too have had intrusive thoughts. Never once. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. That feeling of not alone, powerful. Got rid of that. This is the part I wanted to tell you. So I called our friend Sean McCoy down in Texas, who much like you is on a track to become a counselor. I think you're a little further down the road than he is. Sean McCoy said this interesting fact to me when I told him. By the way, still have not met him face to face in person. That will happen hopefully in October. Sean said to me, Neil, you have every right to do it. I was like, what? He's like, I know you probably didn't think you were going to hear that from me. You absolutely have every right to do it. If you want to kill yourself, you have every right to do it. That is your choice. He's like, hear me though. I don't want you to make that choice. I don't at all want you to make that choice. You have every right to make that choice. Now, what are you going to do with that choice?
Wow. Shout out to Sean McCoy. Also have never met him in person, but became one of my favorite COVID connections. Neil, I love you because I'm sitting here. My heart is shattered in so many ways. I love you, man. I do. And this is what I do. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm so proud of you. What you did was, whether that PFC was making all the rules or online, maybe part of it was on, and this is what Sean's feedback to you is appropriate in the sense, if you have access to logic and if you have access to reality, for lack of a better term, you are able to pivot from those suicidal ideations and make a better choice. For those of you listening, it may not be altogether good for you to make this choice alone. Neil, you didn't make it alone. You're still here for today, and we're going to make choices every day to make sure that we ensure that. The number one thing that I'm most proud of you for, and the listeners that are hearing me, and I'm so proud of your pastor too, by the way. Most of us at some point in our life have had a thought, you know what, this world would be better without me. I mentioned something to you before we hit record that I think is important. This is part of my story too, with a suicide attempt. There is a difference between not wanting to be alive and wanting to die. Often the former, not wanting to be alive, is deeply rooted in circumstances, deeply rooted in fear. I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. I'm going to live in my car. Oftentimes, and those patients that I would see at the hospital that said it started with a hurricane, it started when I lost my job, it started with COVID. Oftentimes, people that complete suicide don't necessarily have diagnosis like major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, some of the ones where we have high suicide rates. Our fear centers in our past, our childhood, the things that we learned. We were impressed from childhood of how to deal with these things. And those of us in Generation X, and Neil, I think you're at the end of that. Keep going until, which is what happened to me one day when my body said, nope, we're not doing this. And I didn't want to be alive. It wasn't that I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to be alive. So I took 9 Klonopin, very similar to you. The next day I went to, don't ask me why, it was the Lord himself. You told somebody. You told Elizabeth, you told Sean, you told your pastor. That is a sum total of 3 more people than most people tell. And I am telling you guys, and Neil will put me in the show notes, if you message me through my website or whatever and say, Amy, I'm having these thoughts. First of all, I'm going to do a wellness check on you, so heads up. But secondly, I want you to be able to feel like you can tell somebody. There is no shame in these things. It is hard to be on this planet in 2026. Just last week, Neil, I got, and I'm looking across the room because I can see the picture. I got a text message from a friend of mine. One of the things that Neil and I share is love for our sports team, and a little bit psychotic, actually. I'm a Jaguars fan. This friend of mine from Jacksonville, I go to a game with her extended family every year. She messaged me on Friday of last week and said, hey, Amy, pray for my sister. She had a tragedy 6 weeks from each other. Ross took his life. 6 weeks later, one of their sons followed suit. And Neil, when I tell you, these are some of the most wealthy people on the planet. So it was not that. For Ross, who knows what it was, wasn't that. And that's the difference, I think, between not wanting to be alive and wanting to die. Sometimes there are deeply rooted psychological diagnoses, major depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, severe mental illness. And if that's you, please, please, please make sure you're reaching out for help. Medicine is where medication comes in at that spot. Neil, you told somebody. That is everything in this sense, because you believe this world would have been better off without you, and you reached out to your wife, Sean, and your pastor, who spoke truth into you. And that's what I hope this episode is that, guys, you are so valuable. I've got my You Matter shirt on, and the back of it says, hey, if you're standing behind me, know that you are so loved and so valuable. And Neil, when I tell you that I would look in the eyes of patients at the hospital and tell them that, and they would look at me like, yeah, right. Do you fundamentally feel unvaluable based on who you are, not what you do?
I think that's one of the harder questions I've had to answer in a while. I think for a long time, I tried to hide that. Our church, kind of in that same time period, was going through the book of Galatians, where Paul is really, for those non-Bible scholars, is really attacking, in a sense, good way, not mean or vindictive way, but in a righteous way of standing up for the works of the Spirit. Our pastor said quite often during this time, by the way, shout out Heritage Fellowship Church. That's where Elizabeth and I are going. That's our new community and culture that we're trying to build in. And I think it's just been a life preserver for me, at least, of rescuing me in so many ways.
Literal.
But in that process of going through Galatians over that time period and the beginning of it, I was really struggling for years. And I emphasize years. I thought my life's accomplishment was how I was defined. Mm-hmm. So the success I had in my life, if I had more success, people would love me more. If I did this, people would love me more. If I did that, people would love me more. If I had this title, people would love me more. If I ran a faster mile, someone would love me more. You and I share an affinity not only for sports, Jesus, but I think we also still love that gal, JJ Heller, and I have not stopped my quest of one day maybe sitting with her. She wrote that song, Who Will Love Me for Me? And Amy, there are so many times in my life that song will come on purposely. I have it on a number of playlists. And there are moments, even in this darkness that I was in, that I really was like, who's going to finally love Neil for Neil? And the more and more as I sat with that thought and sat with that feeling, who's going to love Neil for Neil? Is Neil going to love Neil for Neil?
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part is I've never really loved myself. I've never really forgiven myself. The outward, I can show all the accolades and all the things I've achieved and all the things that I think make me a good person. But it's like all that work for what? What do I have to show for it? And that's why I said truly forgiving myself.
I love that song, by the way. Also on many, many playlists. I don't know why. It's perhaps because you were raised by a Marine. It's also because you're a human being and you're outgoing and you're creative and you're a podcaster and you create. If I remember correctly, a 4 on the Enneagram?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for those of you that think the Enneagram is evil. I don't. People who are 4s have a really big emotions. And that's why you're creative. That's why you got that awesome pod shack that you got there, decorated, all the things. That's who you are and how you're made. And then you're born into the world. And the world starts doing what the world starts to do. And sometimes as Christians, we get frustrated with that. It's like, why does the world got to do what the world's got to do? Why do I struggle to hold on to a job? Why have I struggled in these areas? And eventually the whys, the whats, the shouldas, the couldas, suddenly we become our worst enemy. You would no more talk to another human being the way you talk to yourself. I love the song Jireh by Elevation Worship. I've never been more loved than I am right now. I wasn't holding you up, so I never could let you down. And for those of you listening who are like Neil and like me, there was a moment too when I was sitting myself admitted to a hospital for 5 days after taking 9 Klonopin, where the people that came to see me, Neil, they took everything from me. I didn't have a phone. This was in 2008. I didn't have anything. And I had been a high level performer all of my life. And I remember walking around the walls of that psychiatric unit with people much more sick than me and psychosis and all kinds of things. I remember going, well, it doesn't matter because I can't do anything here now. And I remember the people that came to see me, they could have only been in my life because they loved me, because I couldn't give them anything in that moment or many moments after that. So when you, Neil, or when you, listener, are thinking that your value is tied to a job, to a relationship, to a bank account, to a Facebook page, to a following, when you think that your value is tied to that, it's a dangerous road to walk. You're going to fail. It's one of the things I really worry about in this influencer culture. Baseline, Neil, is like having 1 million followers. Think about that for a second. We don't get to not forgive ourselves for a lot of reasons. One of the most interesting parts of Jesus's ministry to me is when he was baptized, when John the Baptist baptized him. It was at the beginning of his ministry. When he came out of the water, the Father said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Jesus hadn't performed a single miracle. I was introduced at a church about 15 years ago. Normally you ask me, "Who are you, Amy?" I'm very proud of this doctorate that's on the wall. I'm Dr. Amy Watson. I'm this, I'm that. I have a podcast, I have a business. For some reason that day when that pastor introduced me to the church, he said, "Tell the people who you are." And I said, "My name is Amy Watson and I am the precious daughter of the Most High God." So Neil, how can we help Neil understand that you are the precious son of the Most High God? And even if this episode got a gazillion downloads, that wouldn't make you any more lovable to the people that in your life, your mom, your daughter, your wife, your mother-in-law, your pastor. How can we help you live in the truth of your sonship, co-heirs with Jesus? That's the crux of this series that you're doing, is forgiveness. You don't get to not forgive yourself. Jesus, about 3 years after that moment, paid the ultimate price so that he would forgive us for things that we actually need forgiven for. How dare we sit in a place where we don't forgive ourselves?
I think it's a daily thing to surrender that. So I know for me growing up, it was not easy. As you already talked about, my dad being the Marine was never there. And if he was there physically, he wasn't there mentally. He was always where he had just come from. My mom is tremendously talented at helping people. I actually shared with her recently over breakfast. I said, Mom, I think that is truly however old she is. I'm not going to reveal that just out of courtesy to her. She's old though. She's finally starting to realize that her gift, her wiring, her God-given ability is to help people, and in a great way. And I think for her to see that and understand that, the road that she's walked of her dad taking his life at 6 months old. My mom was 6 months old when her dad took his life.
Can we time out, please? There's a family history of this.
Yeah.
You buried the lead a little bit on that one.
My mom's dad took his life at 6 months old, grew up most of her life being told, according to her, she was the reason, that her birth was the reason that he couldn't handle it anymore. I don't care what you say. I don't care if you're a Marine in combat or a Marine out of combat. There is just so much trauma that you see. My dad was in a place called Gitmo. It's fancy for Guantanamo Bay. I think he was about 2 weeks into his deployment in Gitmo, and they were in a minefield, and the dude that was training my dad how to look for mines was killed. And there was a news crew there, and it was a big deal. My dad saw that firsthand. During this process, my dad, Gunny, I shared with him this situation that I've walked through. I went to my dad actually on Father's Day. Great Father's Day present. Hey, Dad, by the way, this happened. I've been struggling with this. Here's where I'm at. This is what's going on. My dad, to his credit, Amy, I want to give him a big shout out here. He listened. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't make it about him, which sometimes is his tendency. He said, as I got done telling him the story, he said, hold on a second. Kind of like you, like, let's pause for a second. He gets up, leaves the room, and he comes back after a few minutes, and he said, open your hand. I open my hand, listening to Gunny as I do, and he drops a bullet into my palm. What are we doing here? Like, what's going on? And he's like, I want you to look at that. And so I'm looking at it, and I don't know much about guns or anything like that. People can use them to kill people and even kill themselves. As I'm looking at it, the top part of the bullet, not the shell casing, but the bullet itself, is mangled and beat up. It's like somebody took a hammer to it. What happened with this? And he said, when you were probably in high school, he said, your brother was still at home and the girls were living there. I was ready to do it. I was ready to kill myself. Loaded up my 45. I put that round in there and I shot it, and the gun didn't go off. I was like, what? He said, actually, it ejected. The markings on that are from it ejecting. And he said, I was so mad that it ejected and didn't fire. I took it to the gun range immediately, and I put it in the magazine again, and I fired it off. And he said, and it was the first round on top. He said, and it ejected again. I caught it in my hand, and he said it fired. The rest of the magazine would never fire that round. He said, so I've kept that as a reminder that I'm supposed to be here. And my dad said this amazing statement. He said, you don't need a bullet to remind you that you're supposed to be here. You have so many people around you to remind you that you're supposed to be here.
Tell me who those people are. Tell me some names.
There's a lot of them. I mean, I feel like if I start naming names, somebody's going to be like, well, what about me? My wife. That's first and foremost. My daughter. I would say my mother, my dad, my in-laws, my extended family, my wife's family. I would say my podcast friends, just to make it all encompassing. My church family that we're getting to know and building around.
I want you to be able to come back to this episode and listen to that clip.
To answer your question, that's the piece that I've tried to do is if I can't forgive whoever, I feel like God's going to keep me out of heaven. And not only keep me out of heaven, but he's not going to forgive me. I mean, the Bible's clear on that. If you can't forgive your brother, then who am I to forgive you? Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I have to do every single day is to forgive Neil.
Tell me what you're forgiving yourself for, though.
Well, probably the biggest one. Lost a job. I had a porn addiction. I almost lost my marriage because of that. Seeing Elizabeth's face, seeing the rejection, seeing all the feelings that she had in that regard. I feel bad every day that I hurt her in that way. That's my biggest forgiveness piece that I've had to let go of. I am absolutely awful to myself. When I make a mistake, I call myself an idiot. I'm stupid. You should have known better. I beat myself up verbally, sometimes just in my head if there's other people around. I have to be able to step by step every single day lay that down and remind myself of exactly what you said. Those are 7 powerful words, by the way. This is my child, whom I'm well pleased. I have to remind myself that God is pleased with me. He's not always happy with the decisions I make. There's a huge difference. There's a chasm between the two. You and I share something super in common that I didn't even know about. This broke my heart at the beginning of our recording. Is years ago when you came on my shows, we talked about 2021. You had a picture hanging in the background of one of the rooms that you were in. I don't even remember the room, but I remember the picture. It was a shot of your show logo and it had different facets to your logo and it was kind of built in. And a friend of yours had made that. And I was like, man, I would love it if she made one for me. She did. She created one. People can look at it now. It's the artwork that we're using for this episode. You told me something very painful about the shared pictures that we have. Again, your picture represents your show and represents you and who you're about. And I have never lost that picture that somebody made, that same person that made yours, that made mine. That was one of the first things I hung up, by the way, in the shoe shack in recording now. Before all the North Carolina stuff, before anything else, that was the first thing that went up. was that image, was that picture. What's the other half of that story? Literally, I was today years old. Not trying to be funny. Reality.
Yeah.
I was today years old when I found this out.
Yeah, and I had actually forgotten she did that for you. That was a young lady. I will send this episode to her family, actually. Hollis Orr. Hollis came into my life. She was struggling, very similarly to the conversation we're having today. I would get messages from her in the middle of the night. She would make comments that were suicidal ideations. And I do believe that Hollis did have some of that severe mental illness that we're talking about, major depression. Anytime there's a history of suicide in the family, we want to be careful. And that's a side note for you for sure. Neil, I got a text message late last year that Hollis had finally completed suicide. And this was a young lady that was just in torture, very artistic, as you mentioned. Got a couple things around here, but she died by suicide, is with the Lord now. And I think so much, Neil, of this does come from self-loathing, the I shoulds, the I coulds. And I want you to consider something. You're right. You've got to remember that price that was paid in the completed work of Jesus on the cross. Find forgiveness for yourself so that we don't have to live in shame. Satan wants you to think that you are the porn addicted person that almost lost your job and almost lost your marriage. Not that you're a human being whose sin so easily beset you and you made a mistake. Part of your everyday process, Neil, and I'm here for it. If you need me on text message, part of your everyday process, you're right. You said, I think I just have to surrender that. The root of all of this is I have to do things to matter. I have to get behind a microphone. I have to have a job. I have to have enough money, not still struggle with the sins that so easily beset me. I have to. When have you invited the Holy Spirit to come alongside of you and help you do the things that you get to do? See, there's a difference in those words. I have to and I get to. Do I have to work through suicidal ideations and darkness and loneliness? And ultimately, yeah, that's a really hard thing to say. It doesn't happen with beating ourselves up. I've got this rock. I have a ton of these all around my house. They just represent, here I raise my Ebenezer, my stone of help. And when you think of filtering through your day, are we filtering through with, I am the precious son of the Most High God, and if I don't do a thing today, those 7 words are still there. This is my son in whom I am well pleased. Neil, you've got a responsibility. You're behind a microphone and you're doing a whole podcast series on forgiveness. It is remarkably easier for people built like you and built like me and built like Hollis and built like many people who have suicidal ideations to forgive other people and to love other people. But for some reason, we hate ourselves. And that is a lie from the pit of hell that takes lives daily. You think of people like with your dad's history, 1 every 22 seconds are taking their lives. Their value was tied to being in the Marines, being in war, being all of the things. And when all of those things are gone, and here's what I ask you, Neil, if we stripped everything from you except for that list of people that you said would in there, and many, many more, but you were able to mention some people, if we took everything from you, took the job, took the podcast, took any ministry that you have, took your house even, if we stripped it all down to, I am the precious son of the Most High God. What does that daily surrender look like? I tell people all the time, curiosity did not kill the cat, it cured the cat. And so if you're able to ask questions when you wake up one day and it's like, I'm having a low-key gun thought. What are some ways that resonate with you that you can know that you are valuable because you woke up? And if you never got out of bed, you'd be just as valuable if you went and run a Steve Prefontaine mile.
That's a hard question. I think what I've done more than I ever have in my life is I spend more time in prayer, really asking God questions and asking him to show up. I've heard people say when it comes to Carolina basketball, show up and show out. I like that phrase. God, I need you to show up and show out here. It's not this great, booming, amazing firework display. It's not this overwhelming presence that comes over me. It's none of that. It really is the small and the still. And if you're not paying attention, you almost miss it. It's the little things in life that happen where he just kind of light nudge, like, did you see that? And I'm like, oh man, I missed it. Can I get it one more time? I missed it. And sometimes I get it again and other times I don't. Being vulnerable enough to share that. In the past, when I've struggled with anything, my MO has always been keep it, hide it, shove it away. My addiction to pornography was keep it, hide it, shove it away. Don't tell Elizabeth. Don't tell anyone. Even in this moment, this darkness, this presence that was over me was, I thought, okay, that's what we did in the past. I say we, like there's somebody else inside me. That's what I did in the past. I'm going to try something different. That didn't work. That did not work at all. Let's try something different. And I think a little bit out of frustration, I was like, you don't understand how this feels. I really said to her even, like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go with this. I don't know where I'm going. I need help. Did I go see a counselor? I didn't. Should I have? Maybe. Felt like I did some good steps. Now, again, I know you could probably speak to the counseling element of it and how helpful that is. People should go do that. I had a great counselor.
You went to your pastor for one.
Yeah, that's what I've had to do quite literally every day, is to say, God, show up and show out. I don't know how you're going to show up here, but I need you to show up here.
Do you feel worthy of him showing up for you?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I still struggle with that. And that's where that Galatians thing comes in, is the works, is I still feel like every day I'm sliding God my resume, like, God, do you remember who I am? Like, Do you know what I'm qualified of doing? Do you know that I'm good at this? Do you know that I'm good at that? Always on a job interview. Hey, so tell us 3 weak areas that you really struggle in. I'm like, nobody ever does those. They're like, well, I'm really talkative. I really have a hard time shutting my brain off. I really love to achieve things. Those are my weak areas, but they really sound like positive things. We always try to make them sound like that. In my life, the state that I'm in, I used to run from being creative, because I wasn't like the typical guy fixing things. I didn't know how to break down a transmission. When the plumbing breaks, I call my brother-in-law. I don't know how to fix things. I'm inept when it comes to that stuff. I used to run from that. I used to think, man, I'm not Chuck Norris. I can't save the world. I'm not Captain America. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm creative. So what? It's okay to be creative.
And it's obedient for you to be creative.
I think so.
One of the things that I want you and listeners to take away from this is the devil loves dark corners. The reason why I believe you're sitting here in front of me today, though struggling with some self-loathing, this thought process could drive someone like you and even me, because I'm always giving God my resume. It's true. We can get to a place where we just get so dark that all the things win. Telling somebody, reaching out to somebody. There's a video floating around on Reels for a long time. Is, do you have 8 minutes? And it was just, you need 8 minutes to talk to somebody.
I have a dear, dear friend who is going through a very hard time, and she was telling me about this awful time she went through. And I wanted to be sympathetic, but at the same time, I was really pissed off that she didn't call me. And I was like, I'm here, I love you, I support you. You're always there for me. Why wouldn't you let me be there for you? How selfish are you? Like, you wouldn't let me be there for you. She says to me, I did. I reached out to you a number of times. And I look at my phone, like the text, she goes, want to come over? I'm like, how the hell do I know that that's a cry for help versus every other time you ask me over, which sounds exactly the same? And so she read an article that says that when somebody's struggling, all they need is 8 minutes of help or support from a friend to get them back on track. And so we came up with a code. We write to each other, do you have 8 minutes? It means I need you. And anybody can step out of a meeting for 8 minutes to be there for a friend.
Because, Neil, I don't think you're going to find on this episode, in this moment, where you can say, my name's not on the list anymore. The Lord has placed this before you and said, hey, let's stay out of the dark corners. I should be able to. Why can't I? I can't believe I've done this. I'm an idiot. When those words start popping out of your mouth, we need to float it through Philippians 4:8. Is it good? Is it excellent? Is it praiseworthy? Is it a good report? There's 8 different things there. Is the way I'm talking and treating myself, does it fall in Philippians 4:8? Like if you're going to the beach, because I'm in Florida, and you have shells and a sifter and you shift it. Is calling myself an idiot good, excellent, praiseworthy? Nope. Shift. And ultimately what you're left with when you're filtering that through Philippians 4:8, your thoughts. Our thoughts become our actions become our behavior. Our behaviors have consequences. It starts with understanding that the devil lives in dark corners. We all have them. The reason why Jesus came to die on the cross for our sins is Ephesians 2 says, you were dead in your trespasses of sin. Ephesians 2, and about midway down, about verse 7, I want you to remember these words. But God, for by grace are you saved, not by works, lest any man should boast. Now that's the macro stuff. That's eternal salvation. It's also true about living on this planet, is that you are the precious Son of the Most High God, co-heirs with Jesus. As you walk through forgiving yourself and what that means, it becomes a mission. It becomes an opportunity for this commune with Jesus. Hebrews 4:15 says, not a high priest unfamiliar with our sufferings. We could argue that Jesus was having suicidal ideations prior to the cross. Dichotomy of he is both our king and somebody who has been met with sorrow. The Bible calls him a man of sorrow. And guys, self-loathing, beating yourself up, being convinced that you are the mistake, not that you made a mistake, outside of severe mental illness is probably the number one reason why people take their lives. If your name was in all the letters and you started to erase parts of your letters as you're starting to forgive yourself, how much of your name is still on that list?
Think about you writing your name, me writing my name. As you erase it, when there's the dry erase marker and you erase it, there's still the remnants. There's still like a smear of that.
Yeah.
Probably always going to be a smear of that. I don't in any way want to compare myself to the Apostle Paul. He was out of this world amazing. He was still a man. He still sinned. He still did dumb things. I would say the thorn in my flesh would probably be very much this idea of I'm not going to be good enough. And I think that's a daily, weekly, monthly thing of saying to yourself, no, you are worthy. You are worthy of being called a child of the King. But at the end of an episode, if I feel somebody is sharing the faith that I share, and even if they don't, I will sometimes ask them, especially if it's been a heavy episode, I may even ask them, hey, is there a way I can pray for you right now? Or how can I pray for you? Or do you mind if I pray for you? Some type of language is shared like that. And I got to be candid, in all the years of doing it, I've only had two people say no. One was a Jewish guy and one was a guy in the army. And he said, yeah, I just don't believe in God. And I was like, how can you be in the army and not believe in God? That I think is so important is to really give this to God. Jesus said it best. He says, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. I don't want the burden of this anymore. It's too heavy for me to carry. I know if I can give it to God, and I know that sounds so cliche, like just give it to God. It's more than that, more than just words. It literally is a day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year thing to say, nope, God, this is yours. Nope, God, this is yours. And my prayer really, Amy, has been, God, show me who I am to you. I've slowly been given the ability to say, no, you're forgiven of that.
Right.
I don't hold that against you anymore. And I think to be able to forgive myself, to be able to say that and to be able to do that has been monumental.
I know you said you don't want to compare yourself to the Apostle Paul, but I can't help. And again, I apologize for those of you who are listening who don't necessarily share our faith or even know much about the Bible. Paul, talking about self-loathing. Paul killed Christians. Paul says, this is like the biblical suicidal ideation. For me to live is Christ. Then what does he say? To die is gain. So Paul understood what it was like to self-loathe and not forget and look back on the things that he had done. He had beheaded Christians. He had killed Christians and then had this tremendous meeting with God where he met God. But he said, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. You hit the nail right on the head. You have to give it to God. And for those of you who don't share our faith and don't believe in God, the other things are still true. You're not alone. Talking to other people, finding a way to stay curious about why you're so hard on yourself and not connecting your value, what you do, except for just that you breathe air. And God is the one that decided you're on this planet. But when you get in those dark spaces, Jacob's wrestling with the angel. I wonder what his dark night of the soul was like that made him go into a wrestling match with God. And he said to God, I will not let go until you bless me. And he got the blessing, but here's the thing, Neil, Amy, listeners, he walked away with a limp. There was an eternal earthly mark on him from that wrestling with God. And there might be for you too. If you're not dealing with severe mental illness that has caused your suicidal ideations, the healing comes with hope. Healing comes with stripping down the lies that our enemy wants you to believe. Spiritual warfare, I believe, Neil, that you were probably in. And Philippians 4:8, when you're having those thoughts, I'm an idiot. Why did I should, I could, I didn't, I suck. Do those thoughts, do those words you're saying about yourself, filter through the rock of Philippians 4:8. Paul wrote this, who said, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. To live is Christ. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. That's where this battle is won when suicidal ideations are not connected to severe mental illness. I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you're listening to this episode, I do think Neil probably should have gone to a counselor. We're on the other side of it. It's always a good idea to reach out to places like 988 if you have a counselor or therapist when you're having these thoughts. These thoughts have so much more power on you when you walk through them alone. And you're not a doctor and you don't know. There might be something else going on. And so you should go to a primary care physician. Or also understand, I wrote my entire dissertation dissertation on people that were involuntarily hospitalized. I also get that too. But please don't go it alone. And so, Neil, if we're looking at the list of people you need to forgive, you've got remnants of your name. You're working every day to keep it off the board.
I think that was some childhood trauma of having your name written on the board and the check mark next to it. You're no good. It was that reinforcement. Is to find a flashlight. And that's what I did. I'm not an expert. I don't have the degrees that Amy possesses. There's something powerful about finding a flashlight. I grew up scared of the dark as a kid. I didn't like the dark. Most of my life I spent in the dark. I hid. I stayed away from people. Outwardly, yes, I was very extroverted, as we've already talked about. Inwardly, I was introvert. Like, I didn't want people to know my stuff. I wanted to hide in the darkness. But what does the darkness do? It hides. It hides a lot of your stuff. So many times in life, we need to find a flashlight. Is when the darkness says there's no way, we cannot face another day. A flashlight finds you in the night, showing you one step towards the light. Then Jesus whispers, "Stay with me. This is not the darkness you'll see. Call out his name. Call out a friend. Life is precious. This is not the end."
Amen.
I think that's what this is.
Yeah.
This is a flashlight for somebody. This is a flashlight if you're scared of living in the dark, if you're tired of living in the dark, of not forgiving myself. I am absolutely burdened by that. I'm sick of carrying it around. I'm absolutely tired of it. And I think now I feel free to say that I can be on the recovery element to being able to one day forgive myself fully, where I'm not blaming myself or I'm not wanting to harm myself because of the mistakes that I've made. If I can't forgive myself, I can't forgive anyone. I really can't. Right. I have no ability to do that. Amy, I'm curious about this. I'll step back in the host chair for just a moment. First off, I want to acknowledge what you shared, this whole process, being willing to do this. Amy, I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of your schooling. I'm proud of what you've become as a person. And I've heard from the people I've talked to, not only about forgiveness, the idea of suicidal ideation. It sticks to you. It's almost like a tar. It sticks to you. It's gooey. You have to be careful when you're around people. Jude talks about it. Be careful that their sin doesn't come upon you. That would be one question I would really want to have you try your best to answer from a clinical standpoint and maybe even a personal standpoint. In your opinion, with all the schooling that Dr. Amy has done, is suicide selfish?
No.
Why?
And it's a nice tie-in to what we talked about at the very beginning. If that prefrontal cortex is not in charge, if your fear center, which we call your amygdala, is in charge, or your hippocampus, which lays down memories, if you don't lay down a traumatic memory properly, it'll come out whenever it wants. That's by definition of an intrusive memory. No way you'll ever convince me. And look, and suicide has touched me closely, not by a family member, people like Hollis and people like my friend's brother-in-law and nephew, who, again, I'm looking at the picture just last year, we were at the Jaguars games. There's no way. Does it affect people that you love on monumental proportions? You better believe it. My friend said about her sister, she said, the recovery process will be long, if at all. So I do not believe it's selfish. I believe that to be in that much pain, number one, your thinker, that's what we call the PFC, is not online. So you can't make a logical decision. 2 + 2 is always 5 in that situation. You understand that analogy? Like if your PFC is online, facts are always there. 2 + 2 is 4. Trauma or stress or burnout has popped the prefrontal cortex offline and you're being ruled by that amygdala. 2 + 2 is 6, 5, 2, 1, 12. It is never 4 because you don't have access to facts and truth. Now, in my own life, that time when I took 9 Klonopin, I took them 9 over a period of time, and which is why I'm still here to talk to you. I did have a moment, maybe why I went and told my boss the next day, where I was like, oh crap, this really would have done a number on some people. Problem with this thought, very tied to our value being connected to our performance. We got to be careful about that. Your value is your value. And every one of my podcast episodes, and I'll say it here too, to you, Neil, and to you listeners, you are seen, known, heard, loved, and valued. Whether it's an educated professional opinion or not, I do not believe that suicide is selfish. And I hope that those words serve as balm to people who are living on this planet without the person that died by suicide. I want you to hear me when I say that they had to have been in unimaginable pain. It's kind of like if you can imagine getting your arm cut off and somebody expecting you to go to work and function that day. You're walking around with a gaping wound that's going to take your life. You can't think about work. You can't think about your dog. You can't think about anything. They were in a moment where they had no access to logic. They didn't do it to you. They did it to get out of the unimaginable pain. That's a family member do not hesitate to step in. Many states you can call the sheriff's department if somebody is having some active suicidal ideations. And this is where this does hit home for me. My ex-husband, who is an abuser, died by suicide, and way after I left him. Being the one left behind on the planet, loving him like I did with the pain that he was in, I am able to see he was doing the best he could.
Well, Amy, once again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being willing to do this. Thank you for what you shared. If people are wondering how they can maybe continue this conversation, if there's things that they're struggling with, what's a way somebody can reach out and find out more about Dr. Amy Watson?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm building another website because I am the trauma doc. And so that will be the traumadoc.org. And so at some point when you're listening to this, that website will be up. In the meantime, though, I have a podcast of my own, which is based on PTSD and trauma, called Wednesdays with Watson. Just go to wednesdayswithwatson.com and you can contact me there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. I'm going to be the host again, so I'm going to take that back from you. Sorry.
You can have it.
Kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is today's show today. So I'm wondering about this for you as we go. What did you learn? What did you take away? I'm human. Ha! Hopefully you learned that. Hopefully you learned that I'm absolutely madly in love with my wife. Hopefully you learned that. That's not news to her. Well, maybe it is. No, I'm kidding. She knows that. Hopefully you know this too. As weird as it may sound, you absolutely have the right. You have the right as a human being to say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to push in my chips. I'm done. That's it. Cashing them in. I'm out. I'm out. You have that right. Before you cash in your chips, before you turn in that token, before you say, that's it. That's all. I'm done. Can you just do me one small favor? Will you reach out to that hotline? Amy, what's the number again?
988.
988. So powerful. 3 numbers that really could change your life. And if you need a real person, not that those aren't real people on the other end of that line, they are. If you want like a tangible person, like I need somebody I know, I guarantee this. My friend Amy, much like I, would be willing and able to stand by and stand in that gap for you. Virtually, doesn't matter. Sometimes it's good to have a friend. One of my favorite movies of all time is Toy Story, and we know that line, you got a friend in me. And so maybe that's our ending today, is you have a friend in me. Let that be your reminder today as well. Again, if you're interested in knowing more about the show, more about other people's shoes, you can visit opspodcast.com. It's a great place, amazing place. It's home base for us. We are on the socials, mainly on Instagram. I'm splashing over to TikTok. You can also find us on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. And don't forget this when you go. One last thing. Remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Next week, we'll be right back here as we walk in other people's shoes.